Everyone, and welcome to my February 2019 interview series with women leaders. I'm Emily Wishall of Wishall Wellness Live in Alignment, and I'm here today with Sage B. Hobbs. I've known Sage for a few years now and have really been inspired by, I think, just the directiveness and clarity and sometimes kind of just bluntness that I really appreciate. So Sage is an independent consultant as well as a leadership and relationship coach. And this is very exciting. She's the author of Naked Communication. So we're going to be talking about naked communication today.
Awesome. So fun to be here with you.
Yeah, welcome.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks for being here. So I thought we would just start actually just diving into how Sage defines in the book what naked communication is. So I'm going to read straight from the book.
This is great.
So Sage defines naked communication as an entirely new paradigm for relating to yourself and others. It requires stripping away old habits so that you are in a more vulnerable and naked state. It is courageous, clean, clear, and compassionate. Its purpose is to deepen the connection in all of your relationships so you can have the love and fulfillment you crave. So I read that this morning and in anticipation of having Sage here, and my immediate response to myself was, I'm ready to strip. Like, let's do it. So I'd love to, after sharing that, just hear your take on it and kind of what propelled you into this idea and concept of doing this work in naked communication.
Yeah, great. So for me, the crux of everything is that the quality of our lives is really directly related to the quality of our relationships. So our personal happiness and our professional success they really correlate to how do we live in relationship with others. That we as human beings are not designed to function in isolation. We really thrive in collaboration and in community. And what I began to really see is that impacts how we lead in our personal spaces, so our interpersonal relationships. And I work a lot also with organizations and leaders. It also impacts how we effectively lead and make an impact and move our vision or our mission forward. That if we don't have that foundation of true connection, it's really hard to make anything happen effectively. If you're only knocking off tasks and focusing on execution without that component of...
I like how you say that the foundation is really the quality of the relationships and that true connection and feeling that.
Yeah, and I often find that people, though they want that deeply, and that's like a common universal desire, everywhere I've been in the world, and I've been very fortunate to have traveled a fair amount, there is this human desire for connection, for being seen, for being heard, for feeling valued, for feeling safe, for feeling loved, right? And yet, especially here in the West, like we move at quite a pace of accomplishment and achievement and pushing and striving and driving. And if we don't pay attention to the way we relate to the people in our lives, we really lose out on the opportunity to A, feel that sense of deep personal and interpersonal connection, and B, to make the impact that we really desire to make, because we're not in relationship with those around us. We're driving, barreling ahead.
I completely resonate and agree with that, and I know I can see myself, in both categories, time depending, but more so too in the past. Really, I have that achiever mindset in most of my life, and just like go, and it is easy for me to get lost in my to-dos and just like in between things, like fitting in as much as possible, as opposed to even in the book. I know you mentioned for example. You didn't use this example. You were talking about being with kids, but if you were at the grocery store and actually interacting with the clerk, the things we take for, I don't even know if take for granted.
We just don't
acknowledge.
Often think about it, right? So for me, my life feels so much more rich and fun if I'm in conversation with people throughout my day. You know what I mean? So I know several of the clerks at the grocery store that I shop at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I try to connect when I take things to the post office to mail things to clients or whatever. We don't go to the post office as much, but I was just there the other day, and I know the postal guy.
Wow.
And just being aware that there's always an opportunity for human connection in every interaction, and that if our if our goal in our conversations was to connect, I actually think like the whole world would look different. And that's actually like underneath all of that, that's my real desire, is that there's a sense of our shared humanity wherever we go.
Yeah.
And wherever we go, across, gender, across socioeconomic status, racial divisions in our country that have been coming up loudly, like how can we connect as human beings? And to me, this idea of naked communication, it's not to bowl people over and just say whatever you think all the time. I think sometimes that's maybe what people think when people talk about being authentic. No, I mean, it's honoring the other person's experience, it's being really compassionate, it's having the courage to speak up when it's uncomfortable. It's, when I say clean, it's like not bringing in a whole bunch of old stuff.
Maybe not. I see that as like projecting on that other person.
Yep, it can be projecting, and it can also be like you've been harboring resentment for quite some time, and you weren't having the courage to share it. So then when you finally, the straw that breaks the camel's back, and you just like unleash like a year's worth of pissed off.
Well, yeah, on to a person.
Yeah, yeah, like all the little things your partner has done that has been, you've been like quietly filing away as irritated, or your boss, right? Like all the ways you think your boss has failed as a leader, and then eventually something happens in a project, and before you know it, you're like unleashing in a way that isn't effective.
Yeah, totally. And I love that how you started that with what if the underlying goal for all, communication, interaction was connection.
That's like the crux of it.
And that feels so valuable and so needed. And I think so many people, we are feeling more lonely, are feeling more disconnected, even in this amazing vastness of this instant communication world. And I know you work a lot with leaderships of different organizations. So let's just do an example. Maybe you can take an example of a client you're working with, or like a business person. But because I think, especially in those circumstances, it's really easy to have underlying motivations of, one, it's say, you own a business and have a team under you, of really wanting them to do X, Y, and Z because you're going to get this outcome or this result. Well, what would be an example of really of shifting that more to that connection piece?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me think. So I think it's good to know what each of our own strengths are and where we have areas for improvement, right? I was a school counselor for a decade, so like thinking of it not as weaknesses, but really as how do you empower people to be curious about where they can grow. That's sometimes where I'll start with clients, which is some clients, if you have reached a certain level of influence or success or leadership in an area of your life, there's something you're good at.
Yeah.
More often than not, right? So you've something has gotten you there. And so what are your natural strengths, right? What are they? Are you the type that people can count on you to always follow through and to always execute and to be super efficient and to get things done in a timely manner and to get a lot of things done? If I have a client like that, and then that's an asset. We want to look at, okay, that's the asset. And where do you want to grow to next, and what else might you need to add to your toolkit in order to get you there? And sometimes that kind of success pattern hasn't made space for, hey, how was your weekend? What is happening with your family? I know that your mother-in-law had been sick, because it doesn't feel necessarily to that. If that's your strength pattern, that might feel like
productive.
Yes, doesn't feel productive, right? So it's kind of this idea of bringing things. You talk about alignment, like bringing things more into this idea of balance. Although I think balance is kind of a tricky word. I like to think of like wholeness.
Yeah.
If that's an asset of yours, great, let's leverage it. And how do we factor in what it means for you to be vulnerable, to let the people who work for you see you? What do you like to read? Do they know that about you? What do you like to do on the weekends? It doesn't mean that you strip it all away and tell them like the deep problems you're having in your marriage or your, illness or something like that. But it does mean, how do you value enough the foundation of relationship to pause and slow down and make those connections? And so I'll work at it like that. How do we strike that integration or that wholeness? And then I think of my work as insight meets action. So I want to have the awareness, And then I will give people things to do. Like, this is what I'd like you to try. And sometimes it's around gratitude, and sometimes it's around offering. I talk a lot in the book about offering specific appreciation to the people in your life. Like,
that is so valuable, the specific appreciation.
Specific appreciation. Not like, hey, great job, I so appreciate how you helped out on that project. Or, you know, but like, I really appreciate how you created an organized outline that helped move this project forward in a timely fashion that we could all get on board with. You're really good.
And that feels so different to receive. It really does. Yeah. Cool. I love that.
So just, those are the tools, right? Like, there's awareness, and then there's what is the action that allows you to practice, because it's a new habit. If you've done things one way, it's a new habit.
And allowing, I like using the word practice, because I feel like that has more allowance for not just getting so rigid or like hard on ourselves, just be more curious.
Oh, yeah.
And having a curiosity of, oh, wow, I noticed my old way of relating showed up in this situation. What was it that triggered me, or why did that set me off? Or, oh, how could I have shown up differently? And just being, I like that playful curiosity. Yeah. And I feel like practice invites that.
Yeah, it really does. And actually, when I start out with working with somebody, I call it a game plan. So I like that, like, kind of playful language, and I'm like, it's a game plan. Like, we can change course, we can pivot, it flows, but, you know, there's a structure where we want to go that we break down into various things to try, and then there's flexibility. And I don't believe, in my work, I don't believe that you ever, like, arrive. You know, I've been doing personal growth, leadership development, like this kind of work for a long time. I mean, I literally did, I think you know this about me, like my first transformational workshop when I was in 4th grade.
I did not know that about you.
Yeah, my parents were really into this.
That is incredible.
They were, you know, of the 60s and 70s.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, and I know about myself that I talk fast, I think fast, I move fast, I am like, I feel things deeply. So I have to constantly self-monitor my reactions. And anybody who's a parent, like, that's my biggest trigger space is my own children, which is ironic because they're the people who are the most important to me in my entire world, hands down, no matter what. And they're the ones who like can like push at all the things that make me blow, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking at that. You know, like, that is the practice. The practice is a constant exploration and curiosity around, like, how can I get like 1 to 3% better at breathing first? How can I get 1 to 3% better at how I
love
hear
that.
them?
So it's evolving, and it's not like that endpoint. So what if, for example, here's a current situation I've been noticing a fair bit in the last few weeks when I've been in conversation with other people.
Okay.
So now you talk about listening as well in communication. I think sometimes we can just think of communication to how are we speaking, but there's so much more than that. And I have been in these, I'm going to say they're more interactions because they didn't feel like conversations to me.
Okay.
Where people were just talking at me.
Yeah.
They weren't receiving me at all. They even maybe asked me a couple questions, but then immediately when I would answer, it would
back on their own train.
And it's fascinating. And when I'm in those situations, I really do my best to how do I, practice what I preach on how do I stay and remain in my body, remain present, because it's easy for me to just check out and be like, whoa, when are they going to shut up? But yes, so what is it like to listen and to really receive who's speaking to you and be received as well as you're speaking? So question, and I don't know if anyone else has similar situations, and it shows up in all areas. Yeah.
And women have probably been talked at more. There's that's a whole nother conversation, but I work a lot in the women's space, and that's an interesting inquiry into us. Sometimes it's also that we're trying extra hard to be heard because we haven't felt heard in our worlds.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're getting unloaded on because we have been taught in our culture basically to take care of people and to receive it all and to hold that, right? So you're asking actually a big question, but I'll try and be succinct about it, because there's one, how we listen, and there's two, how we honor our boundaries and our own time and wisdom and expertise, and
it's a big question. First of all, I appreciate the distinction you already made and kind of clarifying the two.
Yeah,
it's a really important
in that case,
and how that can look different. Yeah,
it can look very different, and there's two skills. There's how I want to listen to people, which is with an open heart and really being present and not planning out my next thing I'm going to say. We do that a lot, where we're like, somebody's telling us, talking to us about something, and we're already thinking of like our counterpoint versus just really hearing what they say. We do that a lot also with people we have a long-standing relationship with, and we have an assumption about how they show up for us. We have a way that we already assume they're going to reply or respond to us. So then there's not even an opportunity for a new connection, because we're like, oh no, my mother's definitely going to, if I tell her I'm doing this, she's definitely going to reply like that. And as soon as we come to it with that, there's very little space for your mother to show up differently than how she's ever shown up. So right, there's that piece, how we listen. And then to your question, what I also hear in that is, and I love this about you, Emily, like you are just this very warm, open, receiving, kind-hearted, grounded human. I've said that to you since I met you, and I was like, you've got to be, like, you're one of those old souls. And there's a way in which we have to figure out what our own line is, what our own boundary is, and how long you're willing to stand and listen and be in your body. So I have pretty clear boundaries, but that is something I work with people on a lot. It's not...
And I would love, like, even, like, how do you are... So I literally had a situation yesterday, and it was a woman I care about, have known for a while, haven't seen her in a while, and she talked at me for an hour. And I kind of knew going in, I'm like, I wonder if this is going to happen. And I was just noticing, and I couldn't come up with a way to say in what I felt would be a kind way without triggering, because I think I felt a little triggered of like, how do you stop that train when you notice it in someone?
Yeah.
Or if you notice you're being unloaded, or maybe someone just wants to feel appreciated, like stopping that train.
Ooh, this is so good. Okay. Several thoughts. A lot of this is in the book.
Here it is.
I feel like maybe this is going to tell my age, but Vanna White. I'm like, no.
That's not going to tell your age.
So a few things. If you know there's somebody like that in your life and you can kind of anticipate it, even though I just said assume that somebody could show up differently, there is something to be said for teaching people. You need to teach people how to relate to you. They relate to you the way that you've taught them to relate to you. They relate to the story you've presented of yourself. So that might look like with some people, when you know you're going to get on the phone with them, they're calling you, they're texting you, you're showing up at an event, that you let them know in advance, like, hey, I only have 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Then it just feels like you're starting that practice of saying, like, and then you in your mind too, you've decided I'm fully present for this 20 minutes, and then you're excusing yourself, you know? So let them know the container that they actually have. And when you do that a few times for people, they kind of start to know, oh, I can't actually just totally unload on them. People look for who they can do that to.
Yeah, I believe that.
You know, and I'm not saying that they're doing anything malicious or ill-intended. They could use some training around how to have a conversation that's an even exchange. And I think I actually even talk about that, like what a conversation actually is, you know, the back and forth, kind of the volley of that. So they might need some work on that, and in the meantime, your role is you can love them and appreciate them, and you can start to send them the message of like, this is how much time and space I have for that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you can politely excuse yourself. You can interject and add a story of your own, and then partially that just starts to train them.
Yeah,
in how they can relate to you.
I like that training in how to be related. Yeah. Cool.
And you'll notice that in a workplace or any community or organization. Like, I worked in the schools for years, and we had situations where certain people dominated, and certain people felt very dominated.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel dominated. But largely that was because my communication was such that you can't dominate me.
You didn't even give the space for that.
You know what I mean? I had to give some, like, kind of meet some of the people where they were with, like, a little bit of their kind of force to just sort of show my line. And that takes practice, you know, that's a dance. And sometimes I actually will do that with people I'm working with. We will practice. We will be like, okay, you have a supervisee or a family member who's making it really hard for you to express yourself or show up effectively. Let's practice what that conversation
is. It's so useful to be able to practice that, because I think in those situations that's when it's we can talk about these concepts, but actually practicing it, and especially when you're not in that situation that might be a little triggering, is really useful to help stay a little bit more unshakable in that. And I like how you mentioned too, like meeting them how they're relating to you first to kind of get to that level. There was one other point before we kind of come that I wanted to. One of the chapters in the book is being right versus being happy. I find myself doing this in the car because I want.
Tell me what you mean
when
by
I'm
that.
driving, it's a different form of communication. But, well, I just know, I tend to drive fast. I think I'm a really safe and secure driver, but I'm fast because I'm right. In the cars, I was doing it just driving here this morning. I did yoga, I meditated, and then I get in my car and it's like, there was some car that was just being dumb. That's what I I like label. I'm really quick to label. So I've been noticing myself with driving. I'm just calling myself
Yeah,
out
great.
loud. But
It's great.
that
We're not getting anywhere with that honesty.
yeah, how much it's so interesting. I think a lot of that agitation comes from my need to be right, and they're just bad drivers. But obviously that's just one analogy then for life, and I think in life it's often, in relationship, wanting to hold on to what we think is right. Yeah.
So this is one of my
Being right
favorite things to
what's
talk
that?
about. Being right versus being happy.
Being right versus being happy. Yeah.
And again,
It's
it's
huge.
huge. So I'll try and keep it short. But it goes from driving to national politics, to our values, to what our worldviews are. It is significant. I mean, we as human beings, we love to be right. Like, we love it. I watch it with my children, and it's automatic. We don't think I'm being right. We just think this is the way it is, and you're wrong. Or this is, how can you not see it this way? This is obviously the correct way.
Yeah. Right.
And so I like to say that either everybody's right or nobody is, which usually gives people some cognitive dissonance, and they're like, wait, what? What does that mean? Well, so much of what happens to us in our lives is really interpretation. You can talk to siblings in a family system and as adults, and they'll talk about a childhood occurrence or how dad was or how mom was, and they'll see it a totally different way. One will be like, dad was the big jerk. No, mom was so meek. It's so much is layered with our interpretation, with our lens.
Our own perception. Yeah.
Yeah. There's what happens. I talk about this in here a lot too, the fact versus fiction. There is what occurred, and then there's just this fictional story that we layer on top of it very automatically because the function of the brain is that it wants to make meaning. It wants to understand. So there's nothing wrong with having a point of view or an opinion or an interpretation. Where it gets tricky is if you're so attached to that point of view that there's no space to consider another possible interpretation. And when you carry that with you into your relationships, you fight more.
Yeah. I mean, this is silly, I keep bringing the car analogy, but I'm feeling the heat rise. I'm like, oh, but... Which I think is a useful analogy because it's not an intimate relationship. It's just me driving with people I don't even know their cars.
And here's the thing: you can choose to stay right. Like, I have some things I'm never going to be not right about. Like, there's certain values that I have, things that I believe in, that I mean, this is like a super heavy one, but like around race issues. Like, I have really strong beliefs around inclusivity and a historical lens of how we have treated people in our country, and I don't agree with other perceptions on that, right? That's like a core value. However, I really pride myself on being somebody who can understand other points of view.
That is huge.
I try really hard. So I read a lot, and I try to understand, like, why would somebody else have that? Oh, because their worldview, how they were raised or what they were exposed to. Like, I was just reading this article in Vanity Fair about women on college campuses. It was the University of North Carolina, who are conservative in a lot of different ways, politically, and the backlash they feel that they're getting. And I was like, well, let me understand how a 20-year-old woman who's educated, how would have this world. And I read the whole thing, and I was like, this is fascinating. Okay, they were indoctrinated into a different set of paradigms than I was. And so I don't agree, but there's space for
understanding.
So, like, and then maybe we could have a conversation.
Yes, and that I find that's a huge thing in the polarity right now in our country is there can be no, seemingly in some circumstances, no space for conversation.
And it's hard.
Yeah.
That's like the extreme example of right.
Yeah.
But it is everywhere. Like comes up for us
daily.
It comes up for us daily how things should be done.
Yes.
You should put away your shoes.
The dishwasher.
You should fill the dishwasher this way.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be. And you'll notice there's a satisfaction when you are right. Like everybody loves it when somebody goes, you were right.
It's probably fascinating to compare that satisfaction to then that true happiness. And kind of being clear within yourself, how does that sensation feel differently to you? And I think that's probably an individualized practice. Because there's a difference. That satisfaction from being right, while it feels good, it feels different than when you're really just happy.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I feel like one feels a little heavier and more constricted versus lighter and more space.
Well, one is fleeting.
Yeah.
Like you can be happy in the moment because you were like, ha, I told you you were the jerk here.
Yeah.
But does that really sustain your marriage? Like, I write some example in the book about my husband. We've been together almost 15 years, and it's like he has certain behaviors that drive me nuts, like anybody who's lived with somebody else for a long period of time and is sharing their life with them. And I could be like super right about the fact that he doesn't close the cabinets. It drives me nuts. Why can't you just close the damn cabinets? Yeah, I know you feel me on this, some of you, right? And then I could like dig my heels in there. I could, that could be my stake in the sand. Like, you don't pay attention and you don't care because you won't just change the simple behavior. And that to me feels disrespectful. And, I could go down a whole path of making him wrong.
Yeah.
Or I could also look and be like, there are 72 million other ways that he shows up for me and for our family. And his emotional accessibility, and he's a teacher, and he loves students, and they adore him, and we see them all the way into their 20s, all everywhere, and they say how he influenced their lives. And I have a partner with strong, ethical guideposts. Okay, the cabinets. Like, it becomes less significant that I be right. I mean, that's just an example, but
it's a great example, though.
One is a fleeting sense of satisfaction, and one is a choice of, like, actual happiness.
Yeah, that's a great thing to keep in mind, I think. Rest of the day is the being right versus being happy and within this naked communication piece.
Yeah, it can be the one thing you try out. So if you feel yourself getting agitated or the heat rising or in a conversation with someone and you can just feel like you are getting angry or you are getting uncomfortable or hooked.
Hooked is a good,
just ask yourself, like, is this the time? Is it worth it? Is it worth it right now for me to be attached to this point of view?
Yeah.
You can see what opens up. Sometimes the answer will be yes. Sometimes the answer will be like, actually, I need to confront my uncle who's being hateful, and I'm going to consciously make that argument right now. And sometimes it's like, I'm actually not going to do that right now because it'll disrupt the entire 90th birthday party of my grandmother, and I'm going to choose to have that conversation later. You know what I mean? So it'll open up a choice.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. Anything else you would like to share on naked communication or takeaways? Or I feel like we covered a lot.
I think that nugget of the takeaway is something that you can apply professionally and personally, so I'm going to leave it with that one.
That's really good.
Yeah, it really,
let's just break it into quick little bullets, if you don't mind.
And I wanted to say, it's lifelong work. I mean, it's not, I'm still figuring it out. But I think I'll leave you with this idea of being right versus being happy, and that you just explore and experiment with this idea of, is it worth it right now? Okay, I feel myself getting hooked or triggered, angry or upset. Hooked, triggered, angry or upset. Pause. What am I feeling attached to? What am I feeling like I need to prove?
Yeah.
How am I being right in this moment, like attached to my point of view? Ask yourself that. Literally ask yourself that. What am I attached to? What am I trying to prove here? And then ask, is it worth it? So first notice the feeling, ask the question, and decide if it's worth it. And that'll really inform how you respond.
So helpful in personal and professional. Yeah, that's a great I'm going to be playing with that today.
Great.
And hopefully many other days. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sage, for being here. It's such an honor and, like, honestly, so much fun for me. And hopefully for those watching and got good takeaways. So Sage's book is Naked Communication. Where can people want to stay in touch with you, learn more about you? Where can we do that at?
Great. The book is available on Amazon,
Okay.
as everything is. And you can also see it more about it and my work on my website at sagebhobbs.com. And there's a podcast, which is really fun. If you like to listen.
Sage has an awesome podcast.
Thank you. That has been like such a creative, fun project for me, and I've interviewed incredible women across all variety of industries. So that's called Naked Conversations. So all of that information is at sagebhobbs.com, and the book is on Amazon.
And those will all be linked. Sage's website and podcast will be linked at the bottom of this video.
Thanks, Emily.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. Happy February 2019, or later if you're watching this later. And yeah, please, I would love to share with Sage, if you take on anything that you learned from today or play with this right versus happiness, and how does that show up for you and what did you notice? So I'd love to hear that.
Great.
Cool. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.